Welcome to License to Spend with Tim Whisler from the Whisler Agency. Immerse yourself in expert insights on financial strategies that will empower you to confidently navigate your way to retirement freedom. Join us on this journey towards financial confidence. It's time to take control of your financial future.
You've worked long and hard. You've saved for and maybe dreamed about retirement. Well, here it is now. And, what do you do? You almost have to redefine yourself, which can be tougher than you might expect. I'm Patrice Sikora with your host, Tim Whisler. Tim, I suspect you've seen this in your practice.
Oh yeah, I certainly have, Patrice, and it's fact. I think back to a few years when I was going through the process of earning my CRPC designation. That's that Chartered Retirement Planning Counselor designation. I earned that back in 2017, and I remember everything that we were going through, right? The whole process of being a credible retirement income planner and helping folks successfully navigate retirement. There was one particular chapter that really stuck out to me. And it was the psychology of retirement, and just talking about how it's really important for us as advisors, not only to help our clients, adjust their portfolio for the financial, chapter of life known as retirement, but also for the psychological part of it. And I came across this story that I thought was pretty, relatable to most people. So it basically just goes that, for 40 years, this guy named Jim, a 65-year-old former executive, he thrived in the corporate world. He was the go-to leader at his company. He managed teams. He was the one making big decisions, and he was constantly tackling challenges. His job wasn't just a paycheck to him. It was his identity, right? He loved the structure. He loved the problem solving and the respect that came with that role. But when he retired, everything changed overnight. I think like most people at first, he enjoyed the freedom, right? No meetings. You don't have to wake up to an alarm clock. You wake up whenever you're done sleeping, no stress, that type of thing. But it said that, it goes that after just a few months, Jim started to feel very restless, right? His days felt empty. He realized that something was missing. He kind of missed that intellectual stimulation, right? That sense of accomplishment. And I think a big one too is the camaraderie of the workplace, right? So he started kind of, questioning his purpose. And even his wife kind of noticed, his frustration, and she started to, kind of encourage him, to find that new outlet. So, he tried to play some more golf, but, that fulfilled him a little bit. He did they did a little bit of traveling, but, that really only filled some short bursts as well. So he really needed something more meaningful. And what was really kind of cool was the turning point for him was when a former colleague invited Jim to come and speak at a local university about leadership and career development. And it was that moment that really reignited something inside of Jim. He realized that he still had valuable knowledge that he could share and maybe help others, give them, a new sense of purpose as well. So again, I'll kind of pause there as we kind of go through the rest of the conversation, and we'll kind of talk about the outcome that Jim experienced from this new chapter in retirement, with him kind of finding a new purpose to fulfill his days now that he's no longer working in corporate America.
I like that. It's finding the ways to fill your days. I think that's a very important thought to keep in mind here. But let's talk about why retirement leads to an identity, or can lead to an identity crisis. I know many people who've had this issue.
Absolutely. If we think about, you look at economic cycles, right? Like, for example, you think about there's a paradigm shift, right? So for example, of your retirement can lead to that identity crisis maybe if we're not prepared. For example, the psychological shift of, what you do now to who you are. Okay, so for example with Jim, right? His work provided structure, provided purpose, and he had social connections, right? And I think, many people kind of define themselves by their careers. And all of a sudden you remove that, now all of a sudden here comes uncertainty. And I think that's what sometimes can lead to that, is all of a sudden, that identity crisis may occur if maybe we're not prepared to understand that everything we did for 30, maybe 40 years is now taken away. Now there's a void there, and how do we make this shift from that, what you do, to now who you are?
And how do people respond when they've lost this sense of identity? They've lost their social network for the most part, especially for men, I think. And they've lost the the structure.
Absolutely. And I kind of misspoke there a little while ago. I got ahead of myself because I wanted to make sure I didn't forget this in our conversation. So I'll bring it up now, right? The economic cycles, right? We're very familiar of the ebbs and flows, right? Getting my economics degree way back in the early 90s when I finished my college degree and getting that economic major. We talk about the phases of economic cycles, right? You've got the expansion, you get the peak, then you get the contraction, then you get the recovery, right? The ups and downs, like the ocean. Why do people get seasick? Because you're constantly going up and down, right? Why do sometimes we get, you know, nauseous? Maybe when we see our financial statements, the balances are going up and down, right? Retirement can be kind of the emotional cycles, right? So think about replacing 30 some years of work, 40 plus years of work. Now we're going to retire. What does that cycle look like now? Okay, well, just like Jim experienced, the first phase is excitement, right? It's a new phase of life. We're no longer working. We're retired. We're excited. But then all of a sudden, it can lead into some uncertainty. Well, what should I do with my days? Right? I no longer have this team that I'm engaged with. I don't have the social camaraderie anymore with folks. And that can lead into boredom, right? If we don't feel that purpose anymore, it can lead to boredom. And heaven forbid, but the next phase can be potential depression.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why it's important for us to understand, that there is truly a major difference between what we call healthy relaxation and feeling lost.
Wow. Is there or are there signs that people can look for? And let me ask you this too about how long does it take for these to suddenly show up? How long can you be happy, I guess, in retirement in the
It,
beginning?
no, I think that's a great question. I think it really kind of boils down to, again, how do we how do we fill our days?
Yeah.
Right? Because it really doesn't matter. Like, for example, the story of Jim, right? He was kind of a C-level, corporate level guy. He's managing people, he's making big decisions. Not everybody goes through corporate America at that level, but they still have purpose with their days, right? I think of my dad. My dad was an electrician for Caterpillar. He ran his own little business on the side as well. So, during maybe some times where maybe he wasn't asked to work overtime, he'd go wire some houses or go do some work for people if they needed to change out a fixture, whatever. He just, his days were a purpose, but he didn't have to make big, huge, decisions for a company per se, but he still had purpose in his day.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of people can relate to that. So I think the signs can start to show up, if all of a sudden, if we've not taken steps to find purpose with our day. And I think that's so important for us to do that. I think some signs that might pop up, it could be something for, like, for example, a lack of motivation. Like, for example, when we're working, we know that come Monday morning, Monday through Friday, depending upon what shift we work, we know we have to, answer or show up at a certain time, right? That starts our day right there. You take that away, and all of a sudden, maybe we kind of, okay, what's our motivation to get up this morning, right? That can maybe lead to a feeling of maybe being lost or restless, like Jim was. He was kind of restless. What should I do? I think work colleagues, that social connection, I think is so important. I think if people can miss their colleagues, that work colleague, they can talk about what's going on in the world outside of their corporate office. Um, and I think it can really lead up to struggling with purpose. What do I need to do today now that I'm retired that I, am no longer doing at the workplace? How do I fill my day with purpose now that I'm no longer working? So I think that's kind of how some of the signs that people could possibly look at. Just kind of look at yourself internally and kind of feel like, okay, what is my purpose now with my day, with my week, with my month, with my year, now that I'm retired? I think that's a good place to start.
Well, what are some strategies that people could use to either find a purpose or continue their purpose? Give me some ideas here.
So this was really, I really enjoyed this, researching this, because I came up with in the course of, preparing for our conversation, there was a document that I found that had 5 steps that a retiree can take to help avoid experiencing an identity crisis in retirement. And I thought these were really good. So number one was, if we're not quite at retirement yet, so if it's kind of on the threshold or if it's kind of on that horizon, maybe have what we call a retirement rehearsal, right? So maybe we can start planning. Okay, so from the standpoint of, maybe instead of just cutting off work cold turkey, right, going from 40 plus hours to no work hours, maybe we do a little bit of a transition. Maybe we do a little bit of part-time work. Maybe we do some consulting. Maybe that kind of helps, I think, can help with the mental adjustment of kind of maybe dialing back the number of hours worked before we just completely shut them off completely. And I think there's a handful of clients that come to mind. One couple in particular, we were talking not too long ago, and she said, it's getting closer and closer to retirement, and I'm not sure I'm mentally ready for this yet. And I said, okay, so what are you going to do? What are your thoughts as far as doing this? She goes, I was talking to my manager about this, and she's going to let me come in 2 days a week to work. I'm like, perfect. So see, she's going to kind of ease herself into retirement, but just simply dialing back the number of hours, but still doing what she's doing, and then kind of take it from there. I think that's a smart thing to consider, right? I think number 2, structure your days for fulfillment. The importance of creating a new daily routine. So, for example, here's some good tips. Patrice, I'm always a firm believer of writing things down and setting goals. That's just kind of how I work. I like to do that on weekends. Okay, what do I have coming up this next week? So I write things down. That's just me. That's just how I personally work. I've got my calendar, that I can log in and look at any time. But I still firmly believe the importance of writing things down. So I think in retirement, it's important to set up a new daily routine. Okay, so like, for example, set up some morning goals, schedule some activities, maybe have a theme day, quote unquote. Like, for example, on Thursday of this week, I'm going to do some volunteer work. Or when Thursday rolls around, I'm going to go out in the garage and clean up that workbench. Or maybe Thursday's going to be my workout day or my pickleball day, right? Pickleball's a big thing now, right?
So they tell me.
So they tell me, that's right. I've never played pickleball, but I hope to engage in that at some point. But have a theme day and kind of have fun with it. Set a day of the week. Maybe it's not every week, maybe it's a couple days of the month, but structure your days for fulfillment. I think number 3, another good point is find new meaning and contribution. So what I mean by that, volunteer, mentoring, getting involved in the community. You can actually turning lifelong passions into maybe some part-time pursuits or even some side businesses, right? The story of Jim, that colleague approached Jim and said, hey, look, would you come and speak at this class? Would you come and teach some younger professionals? I mean, look what that did to him. So maybe we can find, purpose with our days in retirement of maybe, some new meaning and contribution of maybe grabbing some of those years of experience and knowledge and sharing that with other people. I think of Beth. Beth is that lady here in Peoria. She joined me on the podcast years ago because she worked for Social Security. I think I've got the year right, for 37 years. And I just remember when I first met her years and years ago, when I first met her, and I asked her, I said, so what are you going to do now? That you've retired. She goes, I asked her what her purpose was now. And what her response has never left my memory. She said, it didn't feel right of just letting go or wasting 37 years of knowledge working for Social Security. I wanted to take that information and help other people because I know it's so challenging. There's so many different options available. She goes, I want to help people. Well, so she retired from Social Security, from the government position, but now she's in another position fulfilling her days and helping other people. She's taking that knowledge. I think that's good too, right? Number 4, the 4th step I think a person could take is strengthen your social connections. Really retirement can lead to that isolation, if relationships aren't nurtured. We understand the importance of friendships, clubs, groups, that align with your interests. There are so many different sources of connection these days, virtually. Facebook can lead to, it's kind of that virtual connection, but that can lead to a physical connection. If you find a group locally and you get together for lunch, once a month or something like that. I think that that's important that we strengthen social connections. And I think the 5th step that somebody could take is prioritize mental and physical wellness. Staying active physically and mentally. We know that just scientifically speaking, that improves our overall well-being. So I just think those 5 simple steps can really, number 1, it gives us purpose. I think number 2, it can kind of re-engage and help us to kind of find that new meaning. And again, it can just maintain a social element. And I've actually heard some retirees tell me, I'm busier now in retirement than I was during my working years. But you can tell that, and they say that when they smile when they say that.
Right.
And I just think that person right there is probably not going to experience any type of identity crisis because now they have fulfilled their days with purpose. And I just think that's important for everybody to experience so we can enjoy those golden years of retirement.
Among the people you know, do you see this impacting men more than women?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you certainly do. Absolutely. And I think too, it's something I look for, not that I'm again playing the role of a psychiatrist at all. That is not my role. But whenever I ask people that I've met for the first time, as we're starting to kind of set the foundation of whether or not, I'm a good fit for maybe the advisor they're looking for retirement, describe for me retirement. And I keep it very, very vague, right? I say, look, you've got a blank canvas, you've got the brush in your hand, do the Bob Ross thing and paint that canvas. What does retirement look like for you? I'm a big Bob Ross fan.
You
I love
just
it.
dated yourself, my friend.
That's right. I know I did. I certainly did. If there's nothing good on TV, I'll find his YouTube channel, watch some paintings. That's just what I do. But anyway, so I want them to describe to me what retirement looks like, and that kind of lets me know where are they at. How have they thought through this? And some people, and this is not for me to judge, but I just think it's good for us to start that process and think through that because I want to make sure that I can do what I need to do to possibly help them. In other words, if I can encourage them in some way to not maybe fear it as much or have that uncertainty because we want to replace our days with purpose. It's going to be a new chapter of life. We know that. But it doesn't mean we have to face an identity crisis. And to your point, yes, for men, absolutely it can be because of the fact that, I think most men are live in the household where maybe and again, I don't want to date myself, but back in the day, like, when I was raised, my dad worked full time. My mom's full time position was raising my sister and I, right? It may be different today. Wives take up jobs as well, but I just think it's men sometimes can lose that sense of identity when we take away that day-to-day responsibility. And I think for single people, it's even more critical that we
Mhm.
find that purpose because number one, they don't have that social element of having a spouse at the house. So I think social connections are really important.
And I think for women too, and for men, moms and dads, once the kids are gone, the job fills in a lot of empty space.
Yeah,
And then when the job is gone as well, especially if the
yeah.
kids don't live nearby, that's a big void to fill.
You aren't kidding. And I just think it's wise for people to kind of just think through that. No different than if they're tackling a project at work. Sit down, think through that. Okay, the kids are out. They've gone to college out of state. They found a spouse at college and then they're setting roots in another state. Okay, let's find purpose. Okay, when are we going to go see them? How often are we going to go see them? Now I start tying in. How do you successfully navigate retirement financially? Right, we have purpose with our money. We have purpose with our days. And I just think that's really important for us to do that. And again, when we're not spending time with the kids or the grandkids, we're not traveling. Maybe we're not, doing expensive things like playing golf or anything like that. Go out there and fill your days with purpose. And it's okay to have a a day of relaxation. Today I'm
Sure.
going to do nothing. That's okay because we still had purpose behind it. But your heart breaks for when you read about stories or you hear from other people that, so and so worked for 40 years and 2 months into retirement they passed away.
Yes.
You know,
Oh,
it,
yes.
it's heartbreaking, and I know that's not the end all be all. That's not saying that they did something incorrect, but we just don't know when our demise leads. When we're going to slip into eternity, we don't know that obviously. But I just think going into retirement with a plan, not just a financial plan is a critical, but an emotional plan, a plan of purpose. That way, then we can hopefully avoid, suffering from identity crisis because we no longer are exchanging our time for a paycheck. Now we're truly enjoying the fruits of those years of working and just enjoying the time, the downtime and spending time with family and having purpose with our daily activities.
All right. You said you are a man who likes to sit down on the weekend and make a note and goals for the rest of the week. So, what do you suggest for our pre retirement folks?
I think it's start thinking through what does retirement what do you want to do in retirement? Just start at the very top. What do I want to do? Okay, well we want to do some traveling. Okay, go one layer below that. Define traveling. And I ask this when somebody shares that with me in my conference room. What does that mean? Define that for me, because again, it's not me being nosy, but I'm trying to really get that picture dialed in. Right? It's like going to the eye doctor. Right? You go there and they put that big, huge monstrosity piece of equipment right in front of your eyeballs, and they start clicking things and it's blurry and it's really clear, right? They're trying to dial
One
it
or two,
in.
one or two, one
You're
or
right,
two.
right. Now, well, they both look the same, right? That whole time. What I'm trying to do, it's the same analogy, just in a goofy way of explaining it. I want them to dial in that vision. Oh, we're going to do some traveling. Okay, what does that mean? You're going to travel domestically. through the United States. They're going to do some trips over to Europe. Well, we're not really big travelers. We're going to maybe do some stuff here in the United States. Okay, what? Are we going to fly somewhere? Are we going to take a road trip? Maybe rent an RV? I keep peeling back the layers. If they're not sharing that with me, I'll ask those questions because I want them to dial in that dream board, if you will, and make it very, very vivid. This is what we're going to, perfect. Now we have something to look forward to, right? Okay, what about the kids? How many kids do you guys have? Well, we have 3 kids. How many grandkids? We have 7 grandkids. Where are they at? Right. So we just keep going further because now all of a sudden, if we can start that preparing for that journey by writing some things down, well, this is what we want to do. Right. This is where we want to go see the kids and the grandkids. Maybe this is some volunteer work that I want to do. Maybe I do want to take some years of knowledge and share this with maybe a community college, or maybe do some engagements, or maybe start a Facebook page, whatever the case is. I just think if we start writing some things down like that, it's amazing how when you start kind of brainstorming, how all of a sudden a half of a page turns into 2 pages because we start writing things down. And I think it's a great place to start.
And I think when you write it down, you're more likely to follow through.
I totally agree with you 100%. In fact, they say that, for people who sometimes struggle with sleep, write things down. What is on your mind right now? And sometimes I've done this. I've failed. I go to bed and I'm thinking, okay, tomorrow I got to do this and this. Okay, wait a second, Tim, stop right there. If I'm already in bed, I'm thinking, get out of bed, grab a pen and paper, and sit down and say, okay, tomorrow I have to do this. Tomorrow I have to do this. And actually, what I've learned, Patrice, to do a better job of that is, I start doing that. Like I said, either on a Sunday night at the very latest, or a lot of times, if I can, I'll do that on Friday afternoon before I leave the office.
Okay.
Because I'll go to my calendar and I'll create a task list. Okay, on Monday when I come in, this is what I got to do, right? If I have time before a meeting with a client or have to prepare for a meeting, it just takes things off of your mind. So your mind can, I think, be a little bit less restricted, maybe less, constricted, if you will.
Sure.
But it gives you purpose.
Preoccupied. It's less preoccupied.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think that can maybe help with some, avoid some sleep pattern issues as well. But I just think writing things down is it's been a big help for me. And I encourage folks to try to do the same thing.
And how about goals?
I think goals are good to have. I think, like, for example, like just a couple of things that people could jot down. Set a couple of small retirement goals for the next 3 months. What I mean by that? Okay. Think about if there's something you want to do, or heaven forbid, need to do. Guys, if you're married, I know that your wife's got a honey-do list if she hasn't already given it to you. I know there's one out there, right? So I'm okay. I've got a honey-do list. I'm going to get the 2 things on the top of that list done this week. That's a goal. You get that thing done. If it's a major project, you write it all out. Do I have to go to Menards or Home Depot and get some parts for this thing? Do I have to maybe hire a professional to help? Whatever it is, it gives you purpose to fulfill. I think another goal to have is to just, again, if we want to do a specific type of a trip that we've not done before, then let's start preparing for that trip. Okay, what's that trip look like? What's the expense look like? Now all of a sudden you've got it dialed in. Okay, we're going to take this cruise. We've always wanted to take a cruise. Okay, for how many days? Where are we going to cruise to? What's it going to cost us? Just write I think it's important to start writing those things down. And again, what type of fulfillment do we want to have in our life? If we truly love what we do, right? We've heard that whole saying, if you love what you do, you never work a day in your life.
That's right.
Right. And I'm blessed to say it. I'm one of those people. I absolutely love what I do. And in fact, Ron and I were talking about this just not too long ago she goes, if you start thinking about retirement, what do you think that might look like? I said, well, number one, I'm not going to be one of the guys who just spends 8 hours a day on the beach. That is not me. I will always be actively doing something. I might be working less hours, but one of my passions is to talk to the next generation of advisors. I would love to do something like that. So I think for retirees, if maybe you enjoyed what you did and it's something you're still passionate about, then do the same thing. Try to maybe reach out to local, I think networking groups might be looking for speakers. There's associations that are always looking for speakers. Small community colleges. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways of doing that. And I think with the power of search engines, we could do something like that and find some purpose and just maybe set some goals that, again, maybe lead us to fulfilling, having a fulfillment of our day that can really, again, avoid that whole potential identity crisis.
And don't forget about being social too, having some friends around, making new acquaintances. As you said, the speaking engagements could actually open up a door to joining a new group.
Absolutely. I just think that's so critical. I mean, I think back of, here in 2025, March of 2025, I'll be celebrating my 21st year being self-employed. but I can still remember how much fun it was at my last job with the social interaction, right? The job itself, no offense to the company, but I just wasn't corporate American material. I knew that. But my favorite part of the job was the fulfillment of obviously, making your boss happy and helping a client solve something. But the camaraderie was just, you can't compare that, and I do miss that. I mean, that was a part of being self-employed that I do miss. So to your point, Patrice, absolutely. We have to have social interaction. We have to connect with people, having some friends, having little gatherings, meeting people at church, meeting people at a social group. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways to do that. I think we have to absolutely do that. There's something about our human being mentality. We have to have that social connection in our day-to-day operations. So,
all right. So does your story about, was it Jim, right?
Jim. Yep.
Jim,
yep.
Does it have an ending here?
It does have an ending. And it basically, he kind of, he navigated this transition because he found purpose with his days by, doing some mentorship and teaching, right? He did some volunteer work. He joined a non-for-profit, helping small business owners navigate financial challenges, right? Because that's what he was good at. He was at a bigger scale, but small business owners like yours truly, there's always financial challenges that we're looking to solve. And he could help out small businesses that way. His new routine, he structured his week with scheduled speaking engagements, some mentoring sessions, and also important, time for his personal hobbies. He scheduled in time for himself. And that is so critical. Whenever I get back an expense template from a new prospective client, and I've asked them to say, okay, share with me how you're spending your dollars today, what you're spending for utilities, your food, your insurance, right down the line. If they don't fill out a dollar amount in that travel expense, I'll bring it up. Okay, when we first met, you had mentioned to me that you kind of wanted to take these trips and do this cruise, but you left no dollars in that travel budget. Make sure that you put in the dollars so you can commit and fulfill that time for your personal hobbies, just like Jim. So to kind of, put a bow on that story, he did not return to work full time, but he found a way to repurpose his skills in a way that gave him meaning. So he kind of went from that lost feeling of excited, of being uncertain, and now to being excited about waking up each day, right? And now he kind of shares with other retirees. He says, retirement isn't about stopping, it's about shifting, and you have to redefine success on your own terms. And I just thought that was a very, very powerful quote. It was one that I highlighted. In fact, I added that to my sheet of quotes that I hang on to because I like to share good quotes with people. And I just thought it was really good. Retirement isn't about stopping, it's about shifting. So I think it's just important for us to understand it. It's okay to maybe feel a little bit of anxiety because it's a brand new chapter of life. We as human beings don't like change. We know that. So let's tackle it with purpose. Let's tackle it with some goals. Let's sit down and kind of figure out what we want our days to look like. And that way we can kind of go into retirement and avoid the potential of suffering from some type of identity crisis to give us the opportunity to really enjoy these days of retirement and these golden years.
I love that idea of shifting. That is great. It's spot on.
I thought so too. I think it was a good analogy. Yep.
So Tim, how can people reach you?
Well, they can reach us a couple different ways. Our phone number is still area code 309-291-0491. They can reach out to us through email, which is simply tim@thewhistleragency.com. And I truly invite folks to go to our website. We've recently enhanced our website with some more resources, simply by going to thewhistleragency.com. We've got a fantastic tax bill calculator on there. They can view our TV episodes that are running around out there now here in Central Illinois. And of course, they can dial in and listen to you and I, Patrice, engage in our previous podcast episodes. So that's the way we can get a hold of us. And if there's anything we can do or maybe something that's on your mind, there's a contact form right there on our website. They can fill it out and we'll be back in touch and schedule that conversation.
Awesome. All right, folks, as you've heard it, retirement is what you make it, or it can be what you make it, but you got to work at it. It's not just going to come to you easily. Talk to Tim. Maybe he can give you some ideas and guide you a little bit. And also make sure you follow his podcast and, of course, share it with others. And thanks for being with us.
Thank you for listening to License to Spend. Click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. The views expressed herein reflect the views of the Whisler Agency. As of the date of publication, these views may change as conditions change. The views expressed herein are not intended and should not be construed as investment advice, and they do not address any individual's specific situation. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of the Whisler Agency. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning. Investment advisory and financial planning services are offered through Foundations Investment Advisors, LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Insurance, consulting, and education services are offered through the Whisler Agency. The Whisler Agency is a separate and unaffiliated entity from Foundations Investment Advisors, LLC. This podcast is designed to provide general information on subjects covered pursuant to IRS Circular 230. It is not intended to provide specific legal or tax advice and cannot be used to avoid penalties or to promote, market, or recommend any tax plan or arrangement for insurance products discussed guarantees or backed by the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company.